Welcome to Men at the Tap, a podcast from Tapestry Ministries. Each episode reflects on the daily Bible reading from the Revised Common Lectionary. I'm Gloria, a fellow traveler on the spiritual journey with the Tapestry community, and we call the daily Bible reading our spiritual manna. It nourishes our souls, fostering spiritual growth as we share insights and interpretations that enrich our lives. It is Wednesday, June the 4th, 2025, and the seventh and last week of the season of Easter. The lectionary reading is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9. It had been a busy time for Jesus and his 12 disciples. As leaders in training, Jesus sent them out into the communities to proclaim God's kingdom and to heal the sick. He wanted them to travel light, no extra clothing, bag, or bread. If people welcomed them, they were to stay, but if not, they were to leave town. When the disciples returned, they reported back to Jesus that the mission had been accomplished. The lectionary reading is centered on Luke chapter 9, verses 18 to 27. It was now time for Jesus and his disciples to get away from the crowds and spend time together in prayer and reflection. Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" The disciples mentioned John the Baptist, who Herod had recently beheaded. Others thought Jesus was Elijah, one of Israel's greatest prophets, and some thought of him as one of the other prophets of old who had come back to life. Jesus told the disciples that the crowds were on the right track. He was a prophet, but not one of the prophets who had come back to life. Then Jesus turned the question around and he asked the disciples, "Who do you say I am?" At that moment, one could hear a pin drop as the silence filled the air. Who did the disciples think Jesus was? They had been with Jesus for a couple of years already. They had seen the miracles of healings and had recently experienced seeing Jesus feed the crowd of 5,000 men from a child's lunch bag. Peter, the eldest of the disciples, finally spoke up and said, "You are God's Messiah." On hearing Peter's statement, Jesus immediately warned the disciples not to tell anyone he was God's Messiah. He explained to the disciples that God's Messiah would suffer much and be rejected by the religious leaders because his agenda did not align with theirs, and this would result in his death. But on the third day, he would be raised to life. That was not what the disciples of Jesus expected to hear. You see, people in Israel were looking for a Messiah, one who would rid the nation of the Roman government, which oppressed them financially and emotionally. They longed for a Moses like Messiah to bring about their deliverance from the Romans. Jesus challenged his disciples to experience suffering for being his followers. If one wanted to be a disciple of Jesus and identify with him, they would have to take up their cross daily and follow him. Carrying one's cross to die for the cause of Jesus would result in finding life forever. Now, in Jesus' day, when a prisoner was about to be executed, the Romans would make that prisoner carry their own cross to the location of the execution. And Jesus told his disciples not to be embarrassed by their relationship with him. They were not to run from suffering, but to embrace it.